than every month on the third Thursday. And so our speaker this month is Mimi McDavid. And I'll read the biography from the flyer.
Or
would you like
I'm
to?
happy to just introduce myself if you like.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right. So without further ado, let us welcome Mimi McDavid.
Thank you. So my name is Mimi McDavid. I have worked with kids, more kids than you can imagine. When I was 16, I started working with inner city kids. When I was 20, I worked with affluent kids. I worked at a residential treatment center for sexually abused kids. Psychiatric hospital as an experiential therapist, working with adults and kids and teens. When I was 30, my partner died, and the hospice that took care of my partner asked me to come and be a hospice counselor, which I thought was, why would I want to do that? Well, it really launched my career, and I started one of the first kids camps in the nation for kids grieving the death of someone they love. In 2004, I went off on my own. I started my own nonprofit, and I teach and I counsel. And in 2005, my partner and I had a child. So I've got a 14-year-old daughter.
So you're in it deep.
I'm in it. Everything I thought I knew, I was so smart about,
Right.
Grace threw it out the window.
So we don't have to feel like the only ones.
No, not at all.
Thank you.
So I want to clarify, my knowledge is more about kids than parenting. Parenting is very difficult, but I know kids really well. I know boundaries, I know how to connect with them. And with I'm just here to teach you and to share with you how I got through all these places, and it's really pretty simple. Working with kids, and those are just some very simple perspectives and tools I'm going to share. What else can I tell you? Before we do that, I want to hear from you guys. So a lot of tonight is going to be discussion, because you're not going to learn very much with me just sitting here talking. So I want two things. I want you to find somebody in the room you don't live with and you don't know very well. I just want a really quick introduction. I want you to meet the person here that you don't know. I want you to find out what it is they came here for. What's the burning question? What is it that you think got you here on a Thursday night when you could be home? The other thing that I want to know is why you're here. Grandparent, parent, how many kids you got, so that I can speak to all of you as we go. So if you would just take 5 minutes, find somebody you don't know, and then come back and introduce that person and the two things that I've asked you for, which is why they're here and what their role is as a parent or grandparent. So good luck.
Okay. Hi, I'm Leanne.
How are you,
Jake?
Jake?
Nice to meet you, Peter.
Nice to meet you.
Hi.
I have a 15-year-old daughter.
Well, it's us. Okay, okay.
Well, I can be.
How is that?
Well,
I really don't know.
Do you have kids?
Okay.
She's a lot like me, actually.
What is
Hours to herself, but
How old is
very
she?
active and
just on the break.
I personally experienced a lot of bullying through Minnesota. I just watched my daughter
how to connect with her better.
and I want to find
Your
jobs
daughter's
to
team. Now, you see
parenting skills that I
I have another
and
she takes care of
her. So she
Yeah.
so that she
Oh,
can make
yeah.
it through.
And like her mommy, she is incredibly outgoing, incredibly
Essentially, it's
incredibly
it's
outgoing,
possible without any
and very athletic.
decisions that she
I just want to make
has.
sure that she and I,
Just
really
looking at
more
more parenting
parents
skills and tools and other awareness to help
Okay.
her through those.
Which, we're coming at it from a
And to
totally
keep our
different perspective, like,
relationship.
unfortunately, my mom had it.
I really like to do that. So I haven't built my
So I want to bring her in, I don't want her to go away in these years where we're.
My son acts like a
I find that I have my range Monday. I've got 16 girls, my boys 15, almost 20.
Thank you.
So I'm,
How did you hear about this?
well, I'm the girls is like, what I'm hearing, stepsisters to boys, which are my blood. Are my blood, my blood. No, you're gonna introduce, yeah, the other three I am. So I'm finding that I am not
Absolutely beautiful, let me look at your
communicating clearly enough. Of course, you've got this raging hormone.
Mine is smart
They're
too.
girls.
That was bad.
Oh, God, it goes on and on. I have no understanding of genius all the time.
We're also here to support.
And this is her game.
They don't. But they're like 18 years old, they're really struggling with their mind. I was out in the neighborhood, being with friends. They're being
That's
friends.
He's got two.
This is there's separation, I don't know, the 13-year-old.
Right, of course, in these years where they naturally have to go through their own thing, especially when there is a dependent. My daughter, I want to feel much closer to her than I did to my mom.
And they're always,
I will,
you know, they're such a great story.
Just learning.
They don't watch television, so I I'm just,
you never know.
I don't know if I would understand, but
About 2 more minutes, 2 more minutes.
I think
You know,
just
stay with that, just
well, good, they're using there,
Sometimes.
they
That's a
ask
good age.
money and
Yeah,
food.
14 or 15 is a good age.
Oh.
Yeah, she's a good kid.
Yeah, my
For
sister.
sure, a lot
Times
of
are
it-
changing,
for sure, a lot of good
how do we
kids.
just, how do we support I find single parents.
You got any teenagers in your
Yeah, a lot of our
house?
play in our house. My husband's with her right now. Yeah, we just got in tonight. We just got in tonight.
It's just, it's not,
We're on our strength course.
The kid was in Spanish except for the
Wow,
So you find that there will be a different experience between
She's the best
training
flyer
daughters
and
and
everything. Last night in front of the whole school, all the parents there, we had a big sports wrap up and cheerleaders cheer.
Okay, guys.
She let us know.
Seatbelts on.
Good job, Dad. Okey-dokey.
That's awesome.
You never know where it's gonna go.
It's a lot of work.
Oh, I can relate to that. Yeah. They listen to me more, because the parents say they don't. So, yeah, that's fifth generation, yeah, they'll pause more.
Thank you.
Oh, where we should, Pete, could you pass that? We're supposed to sign.
So,
Thank you.
let's go ahead and do these introductions, and you guys can fill me in on why you're here and what your role is as parents and grandparents. Who wants to start? Jay, you want to start?
Okay, so I met Dawn,
Uh-huh.
and Dawn has as a single mother, raising 2 children, 12 and 7. The 12-year-old, the tweener, was, I guess, okay with, her dad being gone until just recently. And now she's having anger issues about her and her dad, and this is pretty tough to deal with. Okay? So she also has a 7-year-old, and 7-year-old seemed, I wasn't sure, but she seems like she's doing okay. She's doing pretty well. Yeah, okay. So the tweener is what you would like to get guidance on.
Yes,
Okay.
very much. Thank you.
And you?
Okay, this is Jay.
Jay.
And Jay's grandson moved here a year ago from Kauai. And he is 17 and he goes to high school in Boulder, well, outside Boulder. And Jay is trying to distinguish his role as guardian, not trying to enable, trying to figure out how to be, well, how to discipline, really just what to do. So, and he's had a year.
You've had a year, I'm sure.
Your grandson lives with you?
Yeah.
Oh.
And got more confused as the year went on. I wish I could say it all resolved, but it didn't.
Linda, you want to introduce yourself to me? It sounds like you know a lot of people here.
Yeah, I do, and I sneaked in late, as no big surprise. And I have some friends who, let's see, the dad died in 2008 and the mom died in 2011, and the girls were, the youngest girls were, I can't remember exactly. Anyway, they were teens, young teens. And the oldest sister is she's a strong figure in their life. And then Lauren, the 25-year-old with her own baby, who lost, there were 4 girls, okay, and Lauren wound up raising Erica and Valeria and got them graduated from high school. But in any case, these girls they're precious to me. And they're stunted and they're troubled. They're good girls. They're not like doing hideous, bad things, but they're, making some bad choices. Yeah, and they're not exactly teenagers right now, but they are.
What is the one thing you came, just for some ideas, you think, or what's the one
I
thing?
just wanted to listen
Okay,
to me. I don't know the answer to that question.
that's fine, okay.
Sorry.
Peter?
Yeah, hi. So I got to know Leanne and her daughter Alexi, who's 10, and 10 going on 17.
Yeah.
And,
You guys know that.
and like you, she's very outgoing and full of energy and full of life. And Leanne really wants to cultivate and maintain a strong heart connection with her as she battles her cancer, which everyone knows about. And we're holding you in light and love around that.
Who's battling for cancer?
She
You are?
is.
Okay.
And so that just sounds like really profound, and I was just honored to hear your story.
Thank you, Peter.
Thank you very much. Is there anything else you wanted to say that I might have missed?
No, thank you, Peter. That was wonderful. And this is Peter. His daughter's Kayla, and she's 15, and a young woman, and a very athletic young woman who has a very grounded sense of being, very deep, very personal, and Peter would like to know the waters that are so deep, as much as he ever did, and as she grows older, make sure that that connection is still tight. And she sounds like she's doing amazing in high school. But as high schoolers are, right? We need to make sure that we know the depths.
Exactly. Thank you.
Very good.
I'm Sue, and this is Emily over here. And she has an 11-year-old Isabel. And so Emily was sharing with me that when she was in middle school, that she felt a little awkward and because she was bullied a lot in middle school and that. And so she's hoping that it's not the same experience for her daughter. She'd like to support her and help her to be happy through this time period. And if I had my glasses, sorry.
Which one?
No, it's okay.
Okay.
Wants to keep her relationship intact with her daughter. And she also has an 8-year-old son who is a tween, Kieran. I knew I could tell. So,
He's 8,
Yes.
so he's still a little young.
Well, 9 becomes 20, that's official.
yeah.
Well, he's acting like a tween.
Yeah.
Thank you, Sue. I spoke with Sue. She has an adopted 15-year-old daughter named Kayla, who's adopted from China. And so, and Sue used to work in HR in the hospital and true community care and hospice, doing like healing touch and so forth. So she used to be in a caretaking kind of helping role, and now she's, raising this 15-year-old with, I'm sure, various issues that come up with adopting from a different culture and whatever issues come up with that. And so she's here to hear other people share what they've gleaned from parenting, and to remind her to not to be so reactive to issues that might come up with Kayla, and to keep Kayla safe, and to just learn parenting at this next step.
That's why we're all
I'm
here.
not sure that can be done, but I love it, learn parenting.
Have to just hear it.
Yeah. And this is my husband, Todd,
Hey Todd, welcome.
who was very graciously putting our son to bed, so that's what I was like. I don't know if you want to say anything.
I can say that Todd's a pretty cool dude. He even took his son on a dad-son birthday vacation, the two of them. I thought that was pretty high standing.
It was more fun for me.
The Disney
Okay, we got a couple more.
Okay. I spoke with Pete. Pete is here as grandparent. He has a 13 and a 15-year-old, and kind of generally discussed how, times really are changing. This world that these young people live in certainly is not the world we lived in.
Nope.
So kind of that theme. How do we work with this? And just here to kind of adjust to those changes, and how do we communicate with these young people with these changes?
And I spoke, she's here the same as we are, grandparents, but to Jim's grandkids. And he has a daughter in Wisconsin and a daughter in Lyons. And same situation. We're just here to learn.
Yeah.
Hopefully to retain, but to learn.
We can take notes. Todd, I didn't mean to cut you off. Is there anything that, my one question would be, is there anything that really brought you here? One thing that you'd like to learn while you're here tonight?
I'm here to listen.
Okay. Anybody else? Like we get everybody?
You got us two
Okay.
here.
All right.
Well, I talked with Kathy, and she takes care of her grandkids once a week, is that right? And there's 5 of them?
5.
Wow.
Ooh.
And she's having trouble finding some common ground with the older ones.
Blended marriage, by the way.
And they're, tech savvy, and Kathy's not, so they can't talk that. Their whole society is so different now that we can't relate. Very much that's where her problem is, finding out how to communicate with these teenagers, get them to want to listen to him.
In talking with Jim, it's like his granddaughter is in Wisconsin.
No, the one here, one, that's the older one.
Oh, the older one, okay, the new one's in here. And it's like he finds that he has a better connection with the teenager
than he did with daughters, raising daughters.
Oh, that's interesting.
And so it's like creating that bond and just learning. I think he'll experience the differences between daughter and granddaughter in a whole unexpected way. And because we are different people as grandparents. So having that skip in generation, it does come up with a lot of interesting follies.
Follies. Is that what they're called?
Basically wanted to learn how to communicate with my granddaughter to help my daughter do a better job than I did, or as good as
That's really
I
cool that you're able to make that transition.
Well, I had a very interesting 2 weeks with my granddaughter just 2 weeks ago. We went on a long
Wisconsin,
trip,
right?
long trip to Wisconsin and Michigan. And the trip there and back was quite interesting. I never thought a 13-year-old could be that mature.
Oh,
Unbelievably.
Yeah.
She's
They're-
surprised the
they've
hell out
already
of me.
surpassed all of us. They have to save the world as far as I'm concerned.
The conversations that she had with her friends on the telephone. I don't think I had that maturity when I was 17. She's only 13. I didn't use those kind of words. And she used perfectly, you know. Surprised me.
Well, the good news is these are just almost exactly the issues that I was gonna bring up. To me, if you get nothing else from what I say tonight, to me, the most important thing, the thing that will resolve or help you understand kids is forming a trusting relationship with your kids and grandkids. And that's not easy. You begin by, to me, becoming more curious. To me, curious is a really good word. You want to come to know your kids and your grandkids through curiosity, not through authoritative measures, not the way you were parented. So you want to begin to observe their behavior, you want to begin to listen to them, and you want to be curious. I think one of the most powerful things to do is start using open-ended questions and getting out of the way. If they don't answer you right away or that day, it doesn't matter. You just start asking them questions like, well, what's it like there? What are you doing with the computer or whatever? Or whatever you're curious about, because curiosity is a very powerful question. And it's not that you're better or that you're going to discipline them. And I think over time, kids will open up to you. They want to talk. They want your love. They will tell you about their sorrows, their fears, their doubts, their insecurities. They'll tell you wonderful things too about things they see at school, things they're doing with their friends. But it's a sacred relationship. You don't share that with another parent. That's between you and that person. The most powerful gift you can give anybody, really, not just your kids, is the ability to listen and give them such a safe zone, unconditional zone, with absolutely no judgment. When they feel that from you and when they know that they can trust you, they'll come to you. It may not look like me and Jay processing, like your grandson may not process, but he'll find a way to let you know things. And it doesn't mean they know what they're thinking or talking about. That's why you open up the safe place for them, because they're not going to get that with their peers. You are their safe place. It doesn't matter if you're grandparent or parent or next door neighbor. Your heart is their home. And if it isn't now, doesn't mean it can't be. And when you're working through tough stuff, or they're being disrespectful and you're working on through a conflict, you always end that conversation with, I appreciate you telling me this, and we will figure this out, and I love you, and there just isn't anything I wouldn't do for you. That is the basis of tonight, period. given the time frame we have, I thought it's really hard to talk about parenting in an hour and a half. I'm going to split it up into 3 things. The first is, as far as parenting, it's really important, especially if you have trouble as a parent and you go crazy and you flip out, which we all do, we all get triggered. It's the last place parents usually want to look. If you want to be the best parent, the last place they usually look is how they were raised. But you got to go back and dig around. I know everybody's shaking their heads. Who wants to go back to their parents? It's all about, before I get into it, often the way you treat yourself and the way you treat your kids is how you were treated as a parent. I'm going to say it again, how you treat yourself. It's really important that you learn how you treat yourself. And how you treat your kids is how your parents treated you, sorry. The way your parents treated you is how you formed your self-esteem. Who you think you are. Sometimes it's a lie, the things they told you. A lot of times it was a lie. So who you think you are is formed by the way your parents treated you. Most of us, if you grew up in a house of love, you're fortunate. Some of you, maybe 1 or 2 had it, but most of us grew up in mixed, mental illness, alcoholism, bipolar. People didn't have drugs back then. And like for me, my parents were depression babies, and there was lack and shame and criticism, and as a young adult, I looked back at my house, and I would look in my 20s and 30s and look back at home, and I was like, it seems normal, but why do I feel like shit? Why do I feel bad? And it took 60 years to unwind it and figure it out. That my parents were, inappropriate, rough on me. They just didn't know what they were doing. So the reason you go back and you dig through that is because your kids are going to bring it up. The grandkids are giving you a hard time, and they're just going to trigger all that. That low self-esteem that we have, they're going to bring it up, and so that you don't muck it up. Like I can remember when Grace was 6 or 7, some stuff started coming out of my mouth, and she looked at me like, "Who are you?" And it was just really negative crap. And I was like, "Oh, I'm not doing this." And I knew right where it came from. So when you get triggered, and it doesn't mean I still don't lose it and get ugly and yell at my partner, but when you get triggered, if you know where it came from, it doesn't mean you don't love your parents. You can start working on that. You don't have to have therapy. Sometimes it's easier to talk to somebody about it. But you want to get clear when you're working with kids because they're exhausting and they push your buttons. So we're just going to talk a little bit about how you were treated. What responses did you get from your parents? Did they show affection? Most parents 20, 30, 40 years ago didn't know how. Were you supported? Did you feel loved and valuable? Could you go to them if you needed it? What message did they teach you about yourself? How do you treat yourself? With love? So your parents taught you this. Did they treat you that you're last? And that you're there to clean up the house? I mean, you know now. Are you the last person that you take care of? Or do you love yourself first and go about your day? If you don't know how you respond, look at how you motivate yourself. When you go to work, or you try a new project, or you start to paint a new picture, or you do something new, do you motivate yourself with anxiety? Can I do it? Or with fear, or with, hey, this is going to be cool, I'll be great. So all that's a product of your parents. So,
Up until like what age? Like when should I start evaluating my daughter's therapy sessions, future therapy sessions? Like all up until 5 years old, or every day from here on out?
Well, all I'm saying is this is all fixable, and your relationship with your kid is totally fixable. I've made some really big mistakes. The way you instill trust is you're honest with them. I screwed up and I think it's affected us and I don't want that to ever happen again. And I assure you this, this, and this, and this. Kids want your love and attention. So even though their behavior is gonna be all over the board, and sometimes the worse the behavior, the more they're wanting their love, your love, they just don't know how to get it. So, I'm trying to figure out time, since I just want you, I was gonna have you write down a few things, but I'm just gonna ask you some questions. If we have time, we're gonna come back to it, because I think it'll help as we move through this next 45 minutes. And if you don't answer them tonight to yourself, you can think about them later. What was the family vibe at your house? I mean, did you walk on eggshells? Did you know what the boundaries were? Did your parents say, you know, you can do this and that, but you can't do this? And did they keep their word, or did sometimes they just, you know, spray negativity and shame all over you? Did you... Oh, do you see the effects of your parents when you're talking to your kids? Does it show up?
It does.
Wait, could you say that again?
When you're talking to your kids, do you see how you were treated as a parent, how it shows up? Do you see how it shows up in you? So, when you're talking to your kids, how does it show up? The family vibe you were born in.
Oh, the family vibe. Okay.
What were some of the do's and don'ts? And I think it's pretty, for lack of a better word, slimy. It's like you don't know until you start parenting. It's like, wow, my mom really did a number on me around sexuality or this or that, and I wasn't even doing those things. It's because it was her own take, her own negativity. She didn't even, you have to realize a lot of times when our parents are messed up or confused or they weren't parented, they don't even see you. They didn't see you. They were responding to the pain of the past. So describe an interesting experience or challenge from your childhood, something that informed your childhood. We're not going to get to this tonight because there's too much, but and then to me, this is something that I would like to get to. What are 2 messages that you got from your parents? One good, one bad. I mean, did they instill love in you? Did they tell you what you were good at? Did they tell you you should go this way in school? I spent a lot of my adulthood trying to figure out what I did wrong. Now, it's not that my parents said I was doing things wrong. They were just yelling. So I was trying to figure out if I did something right, they'd stop yelling, but the yelling wasn't about me. See? So these are all really important things for you to mull around, just so when you get triggered and you're feeling like, I am yelling at this kid, it doesn't fit the crime, then you know it's your stuff. You know, if you're over the top and all they did was spill the milk, it's your stuff. Any questions? I'm just going to keep on going. So, building a trusting relationship. I see it as we're here to wait with them. It's kind of like when you sit with people before they die. You're sitting with your kids so that they live. You sit with them while they're babies and they're a lot of work, and then you send them off to school and you pray and you teach them about boundaries and you help them any way you can, and then you come home and you're saying, how did it go? And I'm going to say this a million times, always, always, always praise your kids, always. How was it? Oh, you did great. That's great that you went to school and you were just able to sit there. If that's all they could do, you just find what they can do. Always praise your kids. I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but I think it's important in case we don't get to it. We don't know the jobs our kids are going to have. We don't know what the future holds. Your job is to build their self-esteem and help them see what their talents are. You do that so well. You don't know if they're going to be successful or not, but you can't drive that into them. Who knows if education's even gonna help our kids, but love will. You are there to instill, to boost their self-esteem and figure out what their talents are. So back to what I was saying about we're there to wait with them. To me, it just takes some of the heat off. You're just there to reflect back about how awesome they are. And try not to get too wigged out about all the things at school and all the things you're supposed to be doing, because I don't know how much that means right now. I don't mean that in a doomsday way. I just think these are the things they should be learning, how to take care of themselves, how to set boundaries, not all the crazy stuff at school necessarily. So any questions? We're gonna move into how to listen to kids, how to observe behavior, how to be curious. So I'm gonna talk a little bit about my work, and I'm not bragging. I just want you to see how powerful listening is. I'm gonna tell you some examples of things that happened to me years ago when I started to build this ability to provide a safe space and to talk to kids. I was asked to see a 10 or 11-year-old boy at a rural school, and I wasn't told anything about him, but principals used to just say, "Can you work with him?" So we went outside and I talked to him a little bit, and I asked him about his life and what was going on, and he just started to cry, like nobody I've ever been with. His dad or uncle shot somebody, never met his mom. He wasn't living with a relative. He was unkept. He was on his own. He just let it all go, probably 10 or 11 years, right there in front of me on the playground. And it was intense. I mean, I just wanted to hold him. And the time went on and on and on, and just kept telling me probably everything that had happened to him. And then we were coming down to recess, and I was like, this kid's never gonna get it together. But he did. He wiped all the snot off his face, he dried his eyes, and when I would talk to, a lot of times, in the olden days before there were counselors, I would always tell kids, sometimes I would see him one time, and that was it. You're gonna be okay. Everything you need is inside of you. Trust yourself. Just hang in there. I know it's tough right now. I would always send him with a good message. And he was gone. I never saw him again. I also was asked to work with a boy who I call in my mind Pigpen, not because he was a pig, but he literally had a cloud over his head. I'm sure he'd been abused. His clothes were always dirty. I probably saw him maybe 4 or 5 months. He never said a word to me, but I talked to him. And the only thing I could do for him when I saw him was his glasses were just disgusting. So I would wash his glasses. The reason I'm bringing it up, and I would always instill love and told him he'd be okay, is because you just don't know. And not everybody processes like that little boy that was crying. He may have taken everything in, I don't know. And if it was just washing his glasses, it was worth it. And it was an honor. The other interesting thing that I think is hysterical is I was asked to go I would go class to class and talk to kids about death and loss to prepare them so that they learn how to take care of themselves. And I went into this kindergarten class, and we were sitting on a rug just like this. And I just told them, I was going to talk to them a little bit about what to do with death, with grief or loss, or had they lost a pet. And I said, has anybody ever had a loss? And all these kids started crying at once. And I was just like, I was so blown away, but it was when I was doing this every day, and they got it, and they heard me, and they all just started, 5-year-olds started crying. And so I backed way up, and I was like, oh, we're not here. I mean, I didn't care that they were crying, but this is the power of the work that you do if they can trust you. It's always a little dicier when you're living with them, or they're yours, or they're adopted. But it's all about love and you getting out of the way and bringing that space to them, whether they respond or not. They will feel so wonderful to have this time with you. So how to listen? Well, first, behavior. Whenever kids are squirrely or off, you need to start paying attention, so you want to begin observing their behavior. You can usually see it across the playground, something's wrong with my kid, or, so trust that. And do just basics 101, be curious. What's going on with you? Are you okay? And they probably don't know. Ask questions. Help them understand why they're doing what they're doing sometimes. What's the feeling behind the behavior? And this isn't something you're going to get it right away, but this is through being with them, through observation. Have they had enough food? Are they constipated? Have they exercised? Have they been sleeping enough? So what's going on? You want to look at their life right now. They are off. Is it me? Are we not around right now? What's going on in the home? What's the family vibe? You start there, because it could be an easy fix. They could just be tired. And I haven't even begun to talk about what goes on in the classroom and the shooting, so you don't really need a reason. These are things that will really help you help them. Be open. If they say something that makes you mad, or you're wrong, or don't ever say that. Just be open. If you don't know what to say, don't say anything. So, active listening. This is the gift that you give your friends, what you're giving me right now. There's nothing more powerful, really. All of your focus. When you sit down and talk to it's hard with 5. It's hard with somebody that doesn't talk. But all of your focus. No phones, no distractions. I read somewhere once, if you just spend 5 minutes listening to your kids a day, it'll make a difference. But back to how to listen. Teens and tweens, one of the best places is in the car. They don't have to look at you. So if you really got a problem, you get in the car and you go across town. All of your focus. The other thing about what I'm teaching you is if you're bluffing or you're not into this, or they're not going to talk to you. They never will. So you can't pull this stuff off. You got to get real with yourself and real with them. You become an empty vessel. No judgment. You bite your lip, you leave your triggers, all the way you were treated, you leave that behind, just for a while. Most important thing you don't want to do is try to fix them. You don't want to fix your kid. You just want to support them. They're confused, they're going through a lot, they're growing exponentially. They don't know, they're hormonal. So you just want to say, it can't be easy. I mean, look at you, you're just growing so fast. It can be simple ways to support them. Don't start talking about yourself. Everybody wants to say, well, this happened to me and this is how I did it. Oh my God, that is so old-fashioned. You'll just lose them. Again, always praise. Always praise. Another good time to talk to kids, never right after school. Never right after school. Teens and tweens, I mean, they're rude, they're on their phone. But you know what? They're not rude, they're overwhelmed. School is intense. Be curious, ask open-ended questions. We're going to do some role playing, and you guys are going to have an opportunity to do some. We'll probably just get to one, but it'll be worth it. Again, it's a new world. Don't assume that they need to be a certain way. Somebody told me something, actually my partner, it was really valuable. I was working on this class, and it was about kids on the spectrum. And she does software and technology, and she said, there's all this talk about kids on the spectrum and how messed up they are. And she said, those are all the people in software companies. And she said, and they're holding the world together. She said, and that helped me because that's how I feel. You don't know what your kid's going to be. All they need is your encouragement because we don't even know where they're going. And here, you think of autistic and spectrum, they're messed up, they don't get along, they don't socialize, yeah, but Julie says that they're keeping the world steady through computers. So you gotta get your perspective from your parents out of your way. Open your heart, open your mind. The other thing to remember, this is really helpful. I think of all the kids I grew up with and all of you. I mean, we've all been through a lot of shit. A lot of abuse, and alcohol. I mean, we've all had people, and everybody turned out. We're all sitting here. Not everybody, and it's tough right now, but I'm just saying, you just do the best you can. You love them, and you know, you hope they go off into the wild blue. But you gotta love them. It has to be unconditional. And you'll get better at this. I mean, I just grew with it. Choose your words carefully. They will carry them like a stone. If I could tell you all the stories of what kids cried over, the way their parents treated them, or what they said to them, or, you know, you don't make fun of your kids, you don't heckle them. Even if you think it's funny, you know, they're just so tender and young. Or, you know, what's wrong with you? Even that is just so loaded. Nothing was trying to grow up. There's a reason behind, I said this before, a reason behind squirrely behavior, pay attention. Don't pressure your kids, especially around school. Find solutions. Find solutions. And a lot of that is through this verbiage that we're talking, these conversations. You have to get in there with them, and you don't say you're flunking this class, you just say, what should we do, you know? Open-ended. I don't know, but we'll figure it out. Open-ended. You know, not I'm upset. They know you're upset, you know. And there's going to be times, and we're going to talk about boundaries if we get to it, but, you know, you're going to have to set boundaries and be firm, but to me, once you have those boundaries set, then they're free to roam. You know, you give boundaries so that they have some control. I think a lot of us we didn't have boundaries. Our parents didn't set them. They were just saying, don't do this, don't do that. And so we didn't know what to do. But if the kids know the environment, the vibe, what they can do, what they can't do, then it gives them freedom. Oh, mom doesn't want us to do this. And then if they cross the line, you deal with it and you're firm. But the boundaries are really important. Not sure how to go here. Any questions? That's a good place to start. Questions?
Thanks for the information about the spectrum, because that explains a lot of what work. That makes sense.
Yeah.
A lot of very brilliant people.
That's what Julie loves the people she works with. And she gets them, you know.
Well, they talk about technology in great depth all the time, all day long. And it's a form of intimacy.
Yeah.
You know, I don't get to play that game because I work in marketing. But, you know, I'm a little bit jealous sometimes that I can't join in those conversations because it's a form of intimacy and they feed off of it. It's really amazing.
So what I'm going to do, so that, does everybody have questions?
I have a question.
Yeah.
So, my daughter is vibrant and full of her own opinions. It sometimes comes across as downright sassy. I don't want to judge her, but I have to sometimes say, could we please try to re-examine how we said that? It's
How old
really
is she?
coming.
How old is she?
11. And she's Miss Independence. That's what I told her 5th grade teacher.
Well, I would do two things. I think it's just good to give them some feedback without you know, start with the simple stuff, you know. It's a little bit, sometimes it's a little bit much here. I'd have to think about it. But you want to be careful with your friends. You know, you want to tell them the social piece, you know, because it's really important that they have friends. So whatever it does to you, or you know if it's off and if she's getting too, then you need to dial it back. But that...
I kind of use that term a lot. I'm like, could we just dial that back? Can we try to say that one more time?
But it's also something I love about you.
That's true. I mean, it did tell her teacher in a positive way.
Yeah.
This is Miss Independence. You've got your independent girl.
Right.
You've got your leader.
what I love about you with that part of it is just the humor, you know, I mean, you make me laugh, you make us laugh, you're just gonna have to, as you grow, when I say to Grace, as you go down the road, you're gonna have to figure out when it's appropriate and inappropriate. You bet, you want them, and you hint that it's better if you learn it here, because your friends are gonna bite, you know. It's tough with peers, it's just it's a whole nother chapter. So what I think I'm gonna do is I'm gonna finish the information. I wanna do some active listening, so you get it, not that you don't, but I think it's be good for you to do some. And then we can talk about, I bet there's questions about screen time, technology.
Yes, definitely. What is an appropriate amount of screen time for the week?
Yeah.
That's a big debate amongst the grown-ups in our family.
The other thing, so one of the things I was gonna do, just so you know, one on role-playing on computer addiction, on bullying. And then I wanted to I think it's really important, anxiety. I'm just singling this out. I'll just give you an example. At my house, when Grace was maybe 3 or I don't know, 3rd grade or 4th grade, I came home from work at 10:30, and she was having a full-blown anxiety attack. She'd never had one. And my partner was a software lady, had no clue what to do. And we worked it out. I took her, it was late, and we went, it was summer, and we walked outside and just started walking the streets. And I just kept talking to her, and I talked to her first, but she was just out of her mind. I don't know what's wrong with me. You know, I could just see her heart, you know, and I was like, oh my God. Hardest thing when your kids are hurting. But through this active listening that I'm talking to you about, you can use this. You can use this for anything. Basically, you're opening that space, you're helping them out as much as you can. I did have some tools, but you want to have tools like meditations. Really, they're finding that meditation really helps with anxiety. You could do something like this stuff I'm talking about. So basically what I did with her was I just listened to her, and we talked and talked and talked, and I finally said, and we went out and talked. We walked in the streets till like midnight because there's no way I was just gonna let her sit in her anxiety. And finally I said, you know, when you were little, you had these, she wasn't colicky, she had a problem where she couldn't go to the bathroom. She was just a mess, and I said, you know, it was really a hard time for you, and you know, I'm sure it was really anxiety provoking. I just wonder if that's coming out now. It was the last thing I thought of, and she was like, oh. So I'm just saying you work with them and you work with them until you bring them back, you know. It doesn't matter if that was it or not. She had anxiety for about a year. But there's a book called Refuge, and there's a thing that you do. Doesn't matter what's going on. It's called, the acronym is RAIN. You recognize what's happening. You allow things to be just as they are. You investigate with the person. You can do these if you're having an anxiety attack. And then you just go into natural awareness. I mean, since you guys are part of this church, you probably all talk about awareness. You know that. You separate, you watch what's going on with you, but the spirit of you, the God in you is the awareness. You know, you can start teaching that to your kids right away. But I would have some kind of tool that you can walk them through. The reason I was going to choose this with you, it's a really interesting thing that's powerful, is it has you, like if you have all your attention here or you're having anxiety, it says to bring that up into your face and make a facial expression, and it just kicks the anxiety right out. The tears come. It's powerful. So it's in, the book is called True Refuge, and I just want you to have our arsenal of tools. So meditation, stuff like this you could use. The reason I told you about my kid is basically I use what I use in all those kids. I'm just there holding the space, letting her cry, letting it come out, helping her figure out what it's about. And then she had a year of it, and we had to work with her, but she's better. I think that, I'm not preaching to the choir, anxiety is rampant. It's like, in schools, it flows like fire. It's just, my kid gets anxious with anxious teachers, very empathic. A lot of the work that I do is with empathic kids, helping them manage that. But the primary source of anxiety is parents.
Wow.
And probably grandparents. I mean, these are really, really tough times. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, if you're not doing your personal work, and I don't say that with any criticism, the earth is just pushing us to work. So it's up for us, it's up for our kids, so you need to be especially attentive to keep your kids from losing themselves.
That's interesting you say that, because I tell that to my ex-husband all the time. It's our duty to heal ourselves, or she'll have to do it for us.
Right. So let's go back to the soup that you were born in. We're working on it now. And I'm telling my kid right now, you know, this is what's going on with your mom and I. This is where you got some of it for sure. And I also have, I have people work on her, and she does body work, and it's just another way for her to learn that everything she carries isn't hers. You know, this guy can say, you know, Grace, you're carrying this, it's not yours, it's your mom's, or, so there's all sorts of people out there that can do craniosacral stuff that you're comfortable with. It doesn't have to be woo-woo.
So I have a question. So was she open to you just suggesting some of these different things? Because what I'm noticing, like Kayla went to Montessori when she was young, so they did circle meditation, all that. So now as I see her as a teenager, like if I say, well, why don't we just take some time for meditation? It's, you know, everything's pushed away.
Yeah, I
And
think
so
it's
I was
tough.
wondering about,
I think it's tough. I talk to my kid about, I take her to coffee once a week, and I talk to her about God and spirituality, and she doesn't say much, but she's still with me. And I just think, you know, you just put that stuff in, you just put it in there. I know you think this is
Just do
hooey, but protect yourself. You know, I sent her off to camp. You don't do well with all these people. Protect yourself in the morning. Ask for light. You know, just, I don't care if she does it or not. I'm going to tell her how to protect herself. And when you send your kids off to school, if they're struggling, you know, you talk to them about, there's all this, you know, I show them a little, I do circles, you know. Here's your energy, here's you, and here's your friends, and when you go to school, that energy starts looking like this, and you wonder why you feel so bad. And if there are kids that have really good boundaries and they're clueless and they don't feel any of it, but we're pumping out really empathic kids, and so you do a diagram and you say, you know, you're sitting next to John, and I mean, I don't tell her this, if he's being abused or hasn't had lunch, or, you know, she's picking up on all that. She picks up on all that. So you can do diaphragms, and you can say, you can talk to them how to take care of themselves. And to me, one of the best ways is coming home to you guys. How was
As long as we work on our stuff too.
Well, you're not, it just isn't gonna be that way, but you got 5 minutes. I figure you got 5 minutes, you set it all aside, and not after school, it has to be when they're ready before bedtime. And just say, it can't be easy, my kid just started high school, it's gotta be hard, you know, tell me, you know, it wasn't that bad, you know. They're, you know, at this point, they're pushing you away, but you just still put it out there. Because in the end, you are their home. You're their safe place, and they know it. And you praise them, you praise them, you praise them, and you just keep asking questions, you observe, always are curious, you're not an authority, you're just loving them. What's that like? What's it like doing that? What's it like being with those kids in that class with the purple hair? Just get them started on anything. And the world will open up eventually. I truly believe that. It's happened with my kids. It's happened with 20 years of working with kids. And you'll find if you get good at it, you know, well, I'm really good at it. I mean, people will walk up to me in the street and start talking to me. It's just you become a magnet. It gets to be too much. So, what else? Questions, keep asking questions, because I want to answer your questions.
It's amazing how my daughter emerges after we take her phone away from her. After a few hours, it's like, oh, you're back. You want to talk.
Well, it's part of the anxiety, it's part of the culture. To me, when we didn't talk about, when we were talking about your families, it's the pattern of fear in our culture. The pattern of not a lot of intimacy, and so they're doing this, and what they need from you is the real time, you know. So let's look at boundaries and rituals. I don't know if you're interested in rituals. You all seem like you do pretty well
Yes,
with.
I like rituals.
You like rituals?
I do like meditate every day ritually, and I anticipate my daughter waking up while I'm in the middle of it, so it kind of is a ritual. But it also does show her how I'm centering and
Perfect.
so I'm interested in any other suggestions you have. So boundaries and rituals, that's
So, dinner, research,
we love dinner.
dinner is probably your best bet. Kids that have dinner every night and talk, if that's the minimum, you know, I would use that active listening and no judgment and just, you know, there's all sorts of things you can do. You can like make little questions that they'd be interested in and put them in a jar, and every night somebody gets to pull one out.
Oh, yeah.
You know, interesting things that would be interesting to kids. But dinner, doesn't have to be dinner if you guys can't do it, but dinner every night's a big one. It grounds them, lets them know they're a part of things. Soup night once a month, and you have neighbors and friends over. Especially kids, I think kids have a hard time with friendships sometimes. And I think when families come, it's fine, because there's no pressure. You have to hang out with the family, and they can complain about it, but they've got a friend there. I like this ritual, last night of school, last night of soccer, last night of camp. Candle, pizza, what you'll miss, or what you liked about it. These kind of rituals, kids get to talk. It's what you want. To me, expression is health. It doesn't matter if your kids don't process like I do. I mean, obviously I know how to talk about issues. They're gonna do it in their own ways. But to me, being able to express themselves in a way that's meaningful for them is healthy. And sometimes that means you gotta take them, do these play dates, or take them and get them involved in scouts, but it's worth it because they need that. They need that connection. They need to get off their phone.
Yes.
It's a lot of work. And you know, I do a lot of death and loss. To me, if you guys have a significant loss, pizza night once a week is a really good way where they just get to talk about their family, their loved ones. There's not a lot of pressure. If they don't have the opportunity to express their loss, or if they're not in any kind of therapy, which is not a big deal, doing pizza night, going out, they just get to talk about their loved one, and there's not a lot of stigma around it, the things they loved about them, or what they miss. What else? So there's tons of rituals. Your family rituals are important, vacations are important. And once a week I take Grace to coffee, and hopefully we'll always do that. I don't know, you know. So technology. This is kind of like going back to your listening. You know, if your kids are addicted to the computer and their phones, which most of them are, you gotta find a balance somehow, and it's through listening. You know, if it's keeping them from friends, if it's keeping them from themselves, most important. It's something to have a conversation with them about. The other side of it, it is their world. It is, yeah.
In the heavy usage of the technology, who teaches them this? Do they see it when the parents are attached to their phone or their computer?
Well, I think that's a big part.
You know, we were only raised with TV.
Right. But
You
that
know,
was-
TV isn't even in the picture.
But that was our computer, we were
Yes.
addicted to it, you know, or I wasn't, but a lot of
The
people were.
babysitter.
They start using Chromebooks in like first grade.
Yeah, but when you're watching TV, you can still talk to people.
Yeah.
When these kids are
Not
on
really.
playing their games,
You can't talk to them when they're watching TV
completely
either.
Well, to me.
I'm saying in school, they
School,
start
they're
introducing
required to
technology
do
immediately.
Chromebooks. They're required to send in their homework online. But it's like for parents to communicate with their children, when I see the parents come home and get right onto their phones.
It has to be.
They have the habit
That's right.
too.
So what I was gonna say,
Who's
it is,
teaching who?
it's their world. To me, the research that I see is if you are losing your kids, you need to get on the computer with them and say, so what's so
Show me what
interesting
you're
about
doing.
it? And you start doing things with them and learning with them. The other thing that's really effective is sending them to camps and conferences where they find out how to use it in appropriate ways and they're not just playing shoot 'em up. But it's the future, and my biggest concern is the intimacy with the self, with the parents. And you guys, you have to figure that out through conversations. And I think it's harder the older kids get.
I think it's interesting though that Google, most of their executives and the Facebook executives, I'm not sure which tech company you work for, I've read online that they don't allow their children to
I
use the
believe it.
phones because they are literally addictive and the dopamine fix with the clicks and everything.
By design.
Mhm,
These
that's
apps are
right.
designed
It
to
is by
be
design.
addictive, they're designed to keep you coming back for more.
Stimulated, yeah.
Whether it's a
to
game
override
or
your
a
self-control.
social media thing.
Right.
Instagram recently experimented with not so many likes available and stuff, just to keep the kids a little bit less addicted. I don't know if that helped, but, I mean, that's just acknowledgement on the part of the game design. So, I mean, it's a challenge. So to your point, you know, these are tools, they shouldn't take over our lives. It's like,
So you have a question?
I was just thinking that last year, we went into the school counselor, and we were having some issues at home on limiting the time. And, because I'm more the rule person in the family.
Yeah.
And so it's like, I thought it was a good idea to keep it at 2 hours a day. And so we were doing pretty well with that until we weren't.
Yeah.
And so, and Pete had an app, but then it was a little bit confusing as far as, you know, you have to still monitor it, you know, and set it up daily or, you know, whatever. Because if she needed her phone for, because sometimes they use it in their classroom even, that they needed it, she had to have the capability or had to let Dad know to unlock it.
she knows how the game is.
And so, anyway, it was,
I think
it's
that
a
they should not
confusing
have it an
time.
hour before bed. I think that's an easy one.
Oh, we have a hard and fast rule, you turn it in and it goes into the bathroom for charging.
Yeah.
But do you have, like a ballpark that you feel is a good amount of screen time, not just iPhone time or whatever, but computer time and TV time, like for a week?
I don't. I mean, it's not a huge issue with my kid. She's a big reader. And the other thing that I had a conversation with her about was, I don't want to have to look over your shoulder. So I just had a conversation with her about it. I just said, if there's something you want to see or explore, I just said I want to have a contract with you. If there's something you want to get into or you want to explore or something that's inappropriate, or then let's do it together. You know, I don't want to walk by you and have you do this. That's not a trusting relationship. So I made a contract with her, and a lot of times I'll ask her what she's doing, and usually she's playing a game. Has to do with Harry Potter. She doesn't. Kids don't spend a lot of time talking on the phone. They text. So she does a bit of texting, but she has to turn it off at night. She reads a lot. The other thing is she works really hard. She dances. I mean, it's not my biggest problem with her. So I would say, what are the guidelines? 2 hours a day? Is that what they say?
That's what we, yeah, that's what we
And
came
then
up with.
weekends, you know, to me, sitting, watching a movie with my family is the best. So to me, that doesn't count.
I have to say, this year, it seems like it's, you know, and I, from what I understand from other parents who have older children even, it's a kind of a sneakier time. So it's like, you know, you have the 2-hour contract, but then like if I'm not there, or if they're not there.
There's always gonna be that.
If there's stuff going on, and it's like, and that's what I said too, I said, I don't wanna be monitoring you, could you just do it? You know, and I don't know what else to do without that, so it's like,
I think it's pretty individual.
so,
I think you guys have to figure out what's good for your kids.
yeah.
And yeah, go ahead.
I'll just make this suggestion just because it resonates with me. I try to make it a goal at least once a year to take our granddaughter and his daughter on a picnic to Rocky Mountain National. And we may only get out once a year, but I love nature so much, so that's me. And we just went like 6 weeks ago, and she was amazing. We took the daughter and took the granddaughter and her daughter, and they just started hiking up the Long Lake waterfall, and it was just like, oh my God. I mean, it felt so healing, so natural, so...
You gotta get kids out.
You've got to get them out even if they don't want to go, because I'm noticing with some of this younger piece, all of this beautiful nature that we have, you know, we're 7 hours away from canyonlands and arches, and these young people are going, what's that? Oh, where is that? It's like, oh my God. So there's a component where they're not getting out with the trees and the birds and the lakes and the mountains. And
There's a component of that.
our national park is 1 hour from here.
Right.
So even if they don't want to go, take them on a lake, a picnic.
I agree.
I love it when they don't want to go, and then they go and they have a blast.
They love it.
Yeah, that's my
And
favorite.
let them,
So
Yeah.
I want to say one thing, because I know that there are a lot of people here that I didn't even address some of the issues, because there's a lot of kids are having a really hard time, and there's a lot of issues, and it doesn't matter, I mean, and this isn't, I'm not saying this is mamsy-pamsy, this is just the basics. But whether your kids are on meds, or they're really struggling in life, whether they don't have friends, I mean, there's all sorts of therapies and there's treatment, and you know, everybody has to decide what's best for them. But ultimately, we have to work out our depression, our anxiety, and there's no pill for that. So I'm not saying that this is the only answer. You have to find your way with your own kids. It's going to look different for different people, but ultimately, these things have to be, you know, you want to teach your kid, you got to work this out, you know. I know you're depressed, but you got to get outside. I know you're anxious, but we can do these, you know, cognitive behavior therapy is really effective. I mean, there's a lot of things out there. So it's not that I didn't want to answer all your questions, or I just didn't know what I was going to get here. And to me, these are just some really simple tools and perspectives. But there's a lot more to talk about, because kids are having a really hard time right now.
Yeah, did you bring some cards?
Huh?
Did you bring some cards?
Can I what?
Did you bring some cards?
business cards.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you know, no, but that's crazy, I should have. But I will, I'll give you my phone number, we'll put it in the phone, and I'm happy to answer more questions. But we got time, it's 8:25, I can
I
stay.
got one more thing
Yeah.
that I would like to
We can
say.
stay for a few minutes as far as I'm concerned, and keep asking
Yeah, we didn't
I
start
had a
until
fairly-
10 minutes,
Yeah.
10 minutes
Yeah.
late. so
I had a
that's-
fairly normal upbringing. I can't say I was abused. I was spanked regularly, but I deserved every one of them. And I know it was that way, but what I had trouble with was the feeling that they were withholding love. My mom was withholding love every time she spanked me, and I felt that. I felt that it was the withholding of the love, not the punishment. I deserved the punishment, but the withholding of the love is what hurt me the most. And that's what I chose not to do with my kids. I chose not to withhold love, even when I had a punishment that I knew. do a punishment for them. So that's what I would have to say would be my comment for raising.
Well, I
kids.
think that all of you, if you're here, you're becoming conscious parents. That's what you want to be. You want to be conscious, loving parents.
Just don't let them think that you don't love them.
Right. Praise them.
Punish them if they did something wrong, but don't let them think you don't love them.
So let me give you my number since I forgot my card.
Let's do that, please.
720-988.
More stuff.
7482.
Okay.
7-4,
7482. 720-988-7482.
and it's Mimi.
Mimi McDavid, MCDAVID. My website is mimichangeslives.com. And Jay can always get a hold of me.
Okay.
I remembered everything but my business cards.
And I'm so sorry that I have to leave, but
That's
my
okay.
daughter goes to bed at 8:30 and I got to give her that hug.
Thank you for coming.
Yes.
Really a pleasure. Yeah.
Really, absolutely. You're behind.
Did you guys want to ask any more questions? Are you done? Are we good or?
I just find that every time I'm with the children, it's very fluid, unpredictable. And it's like, hey, just being the listener. And I find that I'm finding myself in more conversation with them or being the listener.
But my guess is you walk into that craziness, right? 'Cause
I-
you're not responsible for it.
No, I'm not, because it's not my household.
That's right. So,
So the dynamic that they have was 7 people in this household, you know, that I just come in and it's like anything, big decision, you talk to the parents. You know, I'm here more of a buffer, I'm here more of a listener, and I can't resolve the issues.
right. Yeah.
You know? Oh my goodness.
Yes, she was just having dinner
Alexis.
after her gymnastics. She just got into competitive gymnastics.
Wow.
I'm so proud of her.
Right.
These are all
Okay,
about-
sorry, everybody.
Bye.
Hey.
This was the last one. Do you have one more of these?
Yeah.
Like your hat.
Whoa,
Like your
I
hat.
should, I had 15, so I
I like
should
it
have.
too.
Otherwise you wouldn't have a look here.
I guess so.